I ended up tripling the unit's social media following and reaching around like 5.5 million people. And they gave me an award.
Sorry, so can you say the number again?
Marine Corps musician, drummer, entrepreneur.
1 in every 10 businesses in the United States is veteran owned.
Meet Jesse Sieff, our next MetroStar Civvies guest.
You know, I actually had my re-enlistment paperwork completely filled out.
From serving as a musician in the Marines
I was basically doing a second job.
to founding Sieff Studios.
There's a cap on how good I need to be as a videographer and editor, but there's no cap on how good I can be as a consultant.
Jesse's journey is one of rhythm, creativity, and innovation.
There's a phrase in the Marine Corps called adapt and overcome. That is something that I really took to heart.
In this episode, we explore his path from military service to entrepreneurship.
You want the right opportunity, not just a good one.
Take a tour of his studio.
The studio was an 8-month project, and it was years in the making.
And even enjoy a walk along the beach as we dive into his story.
This beach especially means a lot to me because I proposed to my wife on that pier over there.
This is a unique look at a road less traveled. Music in the military and beyond.
One of the most widely shared snare solos of all time. It's been performed in Carnegie Hall.
So we hope you enjoy and let us know what you think in the comments.
I don't want to be an influencer. That doesn't align with my values, and that is 100% valid because you're looking at it from a selfish point of view.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Holman, an Army veteran who served in the Medical Service Corps. These days, I work as a technical recruiter in the cleared space here at MetroStar. We know how important these conversations are to the military community, and we're honored to provide a platform for sharing insights, making connections, and building resources for transitioning service members. This is Civvies, a podcast by MetroStar.
Welcome to MetroStar's Civvies podcast, where we're making it our mission to make your military transition just a little bit better. I'm your host, Stephanie Holman, and joining us, not in our studio, we're going to talk about this, is Jesse Sieff. He is a Marine Corps veteran, a musician, and he's also an entrepreneur. Jesse, welcome to Civvies.
Thank you, Stephanie. It's awesome that you're here. Very excited to have you guys here in the studio. And a lot of respect for what you do and for what MetroStar does. And the idea of this podcast, I think, is great. So thank you for having me on.
Well, thank you. I can't thank you enough for welcoming us here. And I know we are going to get a tour later. We came in this morning, saw a little bit of it, and it is just gorgeous. So I definitely want our audience to see your studio. Let's just jump right in. You have a pretty unique military story. I would say that it's an untraditional path that most don't really know much about. So can you share a little bit about what you did in the military?
Sure. And the unique part about it is it's a bit of an understatement because in boot camp, they called us unicorns.
Okay.
And the reason for that is because, well, first, I was a musician going out of school, right? Went to school for music. And there's only so many career options for musicians. You're either going to be a freelancer, a teacher, or you have some other, occupation like working in the music industry, not as a musician, but because you have that background, it qualifies you. But uniquely, I had an opportunity to audition for the Marine Corps because they had a spot that opened up. And this is in 2015 as I was graduating college. And the way that this works is you audition, and if you are musically qualified, then you have to be qualified to enlist in the military. So I went through that process. Well, I won the audition. They sent me to the recruiter, and the recruiter's like, wait a minute, you have 2 degrees, you're 25 years old, and you want to enlist. What is wrong with you?
Right.
So they basically said, like, this never happens. It's incredibly rare to have someone who already has a contract essentially for an MOS that's its own thing. One thing led to another, and I've always been a fan of the military and had a lot of respect for people that served. And this was one way that I felt that I can contribute and share my gift with the Marine Corps. So
absolutely,
that's how that happened.
I have to ask here because I know a little bit of your story. Was the Marines something that was always planned, or were you looking at the Army at one point?
Yes. Yeah, good call. So I actually had an opportunity with the 28th Division Army Band. So it's an Army Reserve unit in Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay.
And originally that was the first thing that happened. I did an audition. They actually came to our college, the Indiana University of Pennsylvania, to basically try me out on all kinds of different instruments. I did drum set, I did keyboards, I did snare drum, whole variety of things. And I ended up passing that audition, and they're like, hey, the contract's there if you want it. You can make this your weekend job, not full time. And I'm like, okay, that's great. And about the same time, I had some mentors in my life who were in the drum corps community. And for anyone listening, drum corps is a niche activity. It's like professional pro level marching band.
Okay.
And they travel the country and they do competitive shows. And I was completely immersed in that world. So a few people that were instructors in that world knew of the Commandant's Own United States Marine Drum and Bugle Corps. And they're like, hey, you're in shape, you play drums, and you just got out of college with a degree in music. Why don't you get in touch with this recruiter for the Marines? So I said, you know what? I want to keep my options open. Let's do it. And they, basically said, hey, yeah, come on down to DC. Here's the required pieces, and you can play an audition piece.
Very cool.
And I took it from there. So that's how that kind of went down.
Well, my heart breaks a little bit. The AV guys here at MetroStar, they know I'm prior Army.
Oh, very good.
I'm like, we lost you. How we lost you to the Marines, but it's okay. You still served. Tell us about the audition tape. I think I actually tripped upon it on YouTube, and I'm gonna butcher the name, so I'm gonna ask you to actually pronounce the name of that YouTube audition piece.
Sure. The name of that piece is called Chopstakovich.
Okay.
And it's a play on words because the composer originally that wrote String Quartet No. 8 was Dmitri Shostakovich.
Gotcha.
And as a drummer, you say, oh yeah, you have chops. We're chopping out on the drums. So I just kind of blended it together and made kind of a fun title. So Chopstakovich is a snare drum piece written over a string quartet. And it's very aggressive, very angular, very industrial, reminiscent of the Soviet Union and the conditions and the very oppressive conditions that Dmitri Shostakovich was composing his music under constant threat of punishment from the government. And I felt a little bit of irony there because here I am auditioning for a military unit as a musician, and like, this feels right. And I continued writing and ended up notating the piece and actually writing it out because it was a requirement for the audition.
Right.
They said, yeah, play whatever you want, but we just have to have the sheet music. And that forced me to write it out. And now I think 8 years later, it's published on tapspace.com, and I think it's their top performing piece. I think it's one of the most widely shared snare solos of all time. It's been performed in Carnegie Hall. And hundreds of people have performed with that piece in, won competitions and PMEA state band, and it's a top shelf piece, and that's what snare drummers do.
Yeah. We do a lot of research before we, of course, make it here, right, and our recording. And I came across the video on YouTube. I was actually in my home gym, they're running on the treadmill, and I clicked on it, and just it's such a beautiful piece. It evokes so many emotions. I think there's the music component of that, but then also the visual. It was just beautifully done. If you're watching this, check it out. It's worth it. 662,000 other people also thought it was beautiful. I couldn't believe the views that you got on that. What I think is interesting too about your story is, so you served, but then you picked up an additional skill with editing and the video and media. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yes.
Transition.
Great segue from Chopstakovich, because that was the first video that I had created. And I had the help of two people. So my friend Justin, who was the videographer of that, and then my friend Zach, who was the audio engineer.
Okay. I was wondering who was behind the scenes, right?
I did not do that by myself, but in the post-production process, I learned precision editing. How do I completely line up the sound with the visual and cut between shots in a way that's cohesive, in a way that's, musical, way that kind of tells a narrative and is a good product. So essentially you can say music videos is where that started. And then I started recording pieces for my friends who were also taking auditions, because of course you stand a lot to gain if you have a professionally done audition video versus just like one on the phone.
Gotcha.
So I got into that. I learned editing and really got into the weeds of that. I was an editor first before a videographer. I didn't actually have my first camera until 2020. And
That's shocking. Shocking, because we're in your studio. I've seen everything that you've done here, and yeah, I would think that this was something you've done for 20 years.
No, unfortunately not. I wish I had some prior experience to speak of, but the only experience that I would speak about is in the Marine Corps. So getting into the commandant zone basically meant that you were taking on a responsibility of public affairs.
Okay.
And the entire unit is public affairs. We are performing ceremonies, ambassador arrivals, retirement ceremonies, inaugurations, all that stuff, funerals, things that the military highly values. And that's the reason that this unit still exists, is to provide ceremonial support for the commandant and the president of the United States for different ceremonies. And then, of course, to represent the brand of the Marine Corps, which the Marine Corps very much cares about. As I'm sure, as I'm sure you know. So we toured with the Silent Drill Platoon and the Color Guard of the Marine Corps, and with us as the musical unit, we're the Battle Color Detachment, and we basically toured the country. We went overseas. We performed in front of hundreds of thousands of people, and a part of that responsibility is representing ourselves on the digital space. So how do we promote these events? How do we expand the impact and the reach that we're having on the community by way of social media, by way of public outreach? And that's what public affairs is. How are we representing ourselves to the public? And getting into the military and, understanding that, hey, I have this core competency in editing. I understand how social media works because I, launched that piece. And they assumed that I understood all that, but I pretty much learned it on the fly. They put me in charge of the public affairs office, and I was doing video content, doing social media management, doing the promotional campaigns. The Silent Drill Platoon started asking me to do videos for them.
Wow.
And
so they recognized your skill very quickly.
It left, I guess it expanded beyond the unit and into the battalion level. We're like, hey, there's this guy in the DMB who's really good with video.
Right.
So over 3 years of having that billet on top of being a musician, I ended up tripling the unit's social media following.
That's incredible.
And reaching around like 5.5 million people. And they gave me,
Sorry, so can you say the number again?
Yeah.
I
had to calculate this for our fit reps.
5.5 million.
So it was like 5.5 million impressions from the video campaigns. And they started at like 6,000 followers. And then it ended up being closer to like 18,000 by the time I got out of that billet.
Right.
So they gave me, Navy, Marine Corps Achievement Medal. They're like, really good job. Meanwhile, I was basically doing a second job, and it took a lot of my free time.
I was going to ask, right? Because when I think of musicians, I mean, you have to keep that that skill up. You're practicing, right? There's a lot that goes into that. Outside of the ceremonies or events that you were attending. So
very high op tempo.
And then you pick up the second, kind of public affairs piece, which is also very time consuming.
In addition to having what felt like a part-time job at a laundromat, because as a public facing unit, we were ironing our uniforms.
Oh, gotcha.
We're painting our shoes black every time that we wear them. We're cutting off the little threads, and like you had to visually represent the brand at all times.
Absolutely.
And at Marine Barracks, Washington, that's just the standard. So if anyone listening to this knows about 8th and I, that's very much the culture is perfection.
Yeah. I got to share this. I grew up overseas on military bases, Army installations primarily. And I remember seeing my first set of Marines on, I think it was Ramstein Air Force Base at the time, and having the thought of, those guys look ironed. I mean, so I understand what you're saying. There's a level of, presentation and quite honestly, perfection, I think, when it comes to the Marine uniform.
It's built right into the culture, and it's just subtly signaling that you are bought in and you care about your appearance. Marines are notorious for that. It's like, how crisp can I make these folds in my uniform?
Right.
And like, how just, squared away can I be? And that is absolutely what they cultivate in the Marine Corps.
Absolutely. So quick go back here. We talked about, you pick up this extra skill that you start realizing you're good at, right? At what point did you think that maybe you could use that skill outside of the military and that it was something you could maybe monetize?
Great question. So other people in the unit were also very skilled, photographers, videographers, editors, and they allow you to do freelance jobs.
Oh, okay.
So in 2020, I think it might have been a little bit of 2019, I had some friends that were going out in DC. We were very conveniently located in the heart of Washington, DC. So there's no shortage of events and things happening around where they need media coverage. And one of the Marines in my unit was going out and, taking photos, and he was transitioning out at the time. He's like, I've already replaced my income taking photos.
Oh,
And we're like, interesting. Really?
right.
Because I'm working a second job, creating these massively complex productions, basically on top of my music job. And he's like, I work with an agency. So I worked with an agency called Nora Lee at first, and they did like creative style shoots, personal branding. And I started going out and taking freelance jobs and saying like, hey, here's my day rate. I'll go out with my camera and, give you the footage.
Yeah.
I cut together a sizzle reel, and I started out doing like event recaps,
Okay.
which is essentially what I was doing in the Marine Corps, just like promotional style, highlight reels.
Right.
And I got really good at that. And that's a high-end demand skill, especially at the time during COVID. So this was at the height of COVID at 2020. So that's when I was
that changes things.
It does. So the digital landscape, I guess the attention was completely shifting to what can we do online and how can we lean into social media. So I was fortunate in a way that I had the timing of that, as horrific as it was, and how much it actually dampened our activities as a performing unit.
Sure.
It did buy me some time. It's like, okay, we don't have the normal demands that we have during, parade season, doing the shows, because people weren't allowed to gather.
Right.
Yeah. So that's a fortunate but unfortunate timing to be starting to freelance and starting to create content.
And what led, so you ultimately went on to serve, I think for 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, I served for 4 years.
Okay. And then what led to transitioning out of the military?
So, I put 2 and 2 together, and I realized that because I knew I could get a significantly higher return on my time invested, simply just doing video production with what little experience I had, I was confirming that belief that I had from the other Marine who had done so with photography.
Right.
So I'm like, I could do this, and I could start my own thing. And I had already in the back of my head proved to myself that entrepreneurship was possible because of the Chopstakovich piece.
Right.
Right. Because that was already generating sales, and I had a website. I understood the mechanics of marketing, sales, fulfillment. And I said, okay, well, I'm just going to make my deliverables a little higher value. I'm going to add a service component to it. And I took the leap. I actually had my reenlistment paperwork completely filled out. I was ready to continue serving. And, one thing led to another, and it just made more sense for me to get out. And, I also should mention that my wife is still in the Marine Corps, and she's a professional musician with the President's Own.
Very cool.
And, after I got out, it's like we met. It's like, I'm really glad that I made that decision, because now I get to be the flexible one where I can control my schedule, my workload. So it all worked out for the best.
Yeah, it's definitely challenging for our dual military couples out there to make it, for a long period of time in the military. So So then your transition probably looked a little bit different than someone active duty. They're the sole provider for their family. What was your transition, like? Would you say that you've come up against some similar challenges that most military service members do? Or is it just a little bit different because you're married to someone active duty? There maybe might not be as much pressure.
Yes, it's a very nuanced question because there are many sides that we can look at. There's the economics part of it,
Right.
Where well, first of all, we had the incredible fortune of having permanent duty stations.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yes, we are not going to be, deployed other than a tour. Like if we do a performance, it's probably for a couple weeks, for a month. The President's Zone goes on tour every October, but we're not PCSing. We're not moving to different installations.
Okay.
You're permanently stationed at Marine Barracks, Washington, D.C. As part of the ceremonial units. So that was one differentiator, I'd say, from the traditional, military family experience that I'm sure you're well aware of. It's like you're uprooting your everything, and now we're here, and now we're there.
Yeah,
So-
I think we're on PCS number 6. I don't know. I've lost count.
Yeah.
At this stage.
Well, I like to see it on both sides. Of course, like there's incredible advantages to that. You get to, experience a lot of different settings, a lot of different, experiences. And, if you're someone that would otherwise want to be traveling, it might be great. But of course, there's massive challenges that come with that. So we were incredibly grateful that was one variable that we didn't have to account for.
Absolutely.
And my wife already, had been established here. She had a house here. I had moved down from Pittsburgh originally, and that was my reason, was being in the Marine Corps. But living at the barracks, of course, it's like, okay, now what?
Right.
But also, fortunate that I knew that she was staying in. She had way more time in service than I did. She was former Army as well.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she served in the Army Field Band.
That makes you feel better.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Another, Army to Marine convert, nonetheless, though.
Yeah.
So yes, it was different. It was also during COVID, and a lot of things that would have otherwise happened. I didn't have a lot of time to plan or prepare, so it was kind of like I just got to go for it.
Right.
And I felt massively underqualified. So
Right. I was going to ask.
yeah. So those are the good things about it. It's like, okay, there's a bit of a safety net economically. I'm not like traveling to another part of the country. I knew that I was going to be local. I have a support system here.
Your healthcare is covered.
Yes.
Sort of thing.
Healthcare is huge. And, and aside from that, like I had also spent the past decade of my life as a musician, and that was my career path.
Right.
I am a musician. I am a Marine, are two very strong identities that I was, planning on sticking with for a long time.
Yeah.
So the biggest challenge for me was the identity shifts. And
I was going to ask about the loss of identity, and have you stayed in communication with some of your military, friends and peers and coworkers?
yes, and I'm incredibly fortunate for that. So some of my best friends are Marines, and they're still serving there, and they're local, right? Because they're at the same permanent duty station that I was. And I've actually hired a number of them as subcontractors.
Oh,
And it's like,
very cool.
It's like, who can I trust to shoot photos? It's like, oh, the person that I have been working with for the past 4 years.
There you go.
Yeah.
Right.
I had them at my wedding. So like my friends are synonymous with the Marines. And I think that was helpful, but it was also difficult because I wasn't as immersed in the culture anymore. And it's like, I don't see these people every single day now.
Right. Your schedule's changing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's going from the most tight-knit group of people you've ever been with, and, the most in sync with a group of people that you can ever be, especially a musical group, to going to like complete isolation. What felt like complete isolation into entrepreneurship, which is not uncommon, but a very stark contrast.
So I want to kind of pause on this. Isolation, it's a pretty powerful word. How did you get through those first moments of feeling isolated? work out? Did you take walks? Like, how did you individually deal with that?
Yeah. I had a number of ways that I dealt with it. So working out, absolutely.
Mhm.
That's always been something that's been a North Star and a non-negotiable in my life. It keeps the other forms of stress relief at bay.
Sure.
So, substances, for example, that is massively tempting after you get out of the military and there's no one to hold you accountable for it.
Right.
So, I'll be honest and say I struggle with that a little bit
Mhm.
because I was like, okay, I'm a free person now. I can
Right.
I can do what I want. And of course, that leads to the realization of boundaries. Where do I set my boundaries?
Yeah, absolutely.
And now I am the sole dictator of my own schedule,
Right.
my own goals, my values, everything.
Mhm.
And I don't have a plan of the day. I don't have an ops or an admin or a CO or a group of people to help shape that guidance. But I dealt with it also through self-education and I guess self-improvement. So I read a lot of books. I listened to a lot of podcasts. I invested in a lot of courses, masterminds. I overinvested in education because of how unqualified I was. Not only do I not have any corporate experience to
Right.
speak of, I don't have any, and I never worked for anyone as a videographer or an editor aside from the Marine Corps. I was never in business before. I've never started a business. It's
Right.
all new. So my way of coping with that is just obsessing over learning and learning and learning and just like absorbing information, which has diminishing returns if you don't implement any of it.
Right. So talk to me about the implementation piece. What did that look like for you? So you read a bunch of stuff, you take courses, then what?
Mm-hmm.
What's the next step?
Yeah. Well, at the time I was keeping the lights on, paying the bills by being a freelancer. That was the model that I was using. It's like, hey, you need a video? I do videos. Great. And here's what I charge. And, that's that.
Sure.
But there was no continuity. There's no like higher level strategy of like, what do I plan to do if I completely book up my time as a freelancer?
Okay.
And I also didn't have a lot of clarity on the industry that I wanted to focus on.
Mhm.
And as I mentioned, I worked under a creative agency and they're doing a lot of like social media, brand shoots. I ended up working with a client that was in New York Fashion Week, and I was the technical director for New York Fashion Week for 2 years.
Wow.
And it's like, okay, that was a lot of work, big, high profile, high maintenance clients, I would say. They very much care about their appearance, just like the Marines.
Right.
But I wasn't fulfilled by that. And I'm not a fashion person. I don't really, it's not something that really spoke to me.
Right.
So I started to realize that I need to be a little bit more specific with where I'm focusing my attention, my time, and completely immersing myself in education feels good because I feel like I know something and I'm more qualified, but I need to put it into practice. So as I was, going through this process, I started to lean back into the military community. And as a veteran, we have a huge advantage of having this common ground of trust.
Yep.
That is just ubiquitous and it's just like the base layer in our society, and especially the United States. Even if you're not a veteran, you probably have some respect for the military.
Sure, absolutely.
So I realized, still being in the DMV area where a lot of, heavily concentrated, geography of military bases and agencies, you have Fort Meade, you have 8th and I, you have Aberdeen, you have a number of different installations there. So I'm going to networking events. I'm meeting people. I'm, listening to people in the veteran space and what they're interested, what they're talking about. And this I saw this big Venn diagram. There's the veteran community, veteran service organizations, and then there's workforce development.
Okay.
And then I saw the overlap, and it's like, what are veterans uniquely qualified to do? One is entrepreneurship. I think 1 in every 10 businesses in the United States is veteran owned.
Yes. Yep.
And The other is high stakes, high trust roles. And I know that you could speak at length about this, but getting out of the military, a good percentage of the 200,000 people that are exiting the military have top clearances that qualify them uniquely for these positions that are high trust, high visibility, or high stakes roles, where you want that person with the background that has the experience of doing things a certain way, following procedures, being very disciplined, but also having a great work ethic. So I started to lean back into that community because I just enjoy working with people like that.
And I have to ask this for our viewers, because sometimes we hear these stories and we think, okay, this person's the exception, right? We know you're a musician, you're extremely talented, well-spoken, you've built this beautiful studio. So for those that aren't there yet, what would you say with like just going to a networking event? If a veteran hasn't been to one before, they're feeling kind of hesitant, they're going to walk in, not know anybody, not know what advice do you give to someone that is literally just starting out at ground zero with just the basics of showing up to a networking event?
Yes. So you have to ask yourself what your goals are and realign with what success looks like for you. And if you're clear on that, then you will know a good opportunity when you see it. I hesitated because you want the right opportunity.
Yep.
Not just a good one, right? You want the one that is actionable and relevant to you. And you're going to get a lot of advice from people, right? You're saying, I'm transitioning out of the military, not really sure what I want to do. That's probably the most common thing.
Right.
And you're going to get people chiming in to give their input. It's like, oh, have you considered this? Have you considered that? And now you're going to start considering all kinds of different perspectives. So what I would encourage you to do is reflect before you put yourself in that situation. Control your inputs, right? Your flow of communications, and just really get clear on yourself and what your values are, what's important to you, and ask yourself those hard questions like, okay, what could I see myself doing every day? Is there something that I did in my military service that lit me up, even if it was completely unrelated to my MOS or my focus? I was the truck squad leader for the drum corps. And it's like, there's something gratifying about making sure that this truck is nice and symmetrical and loaded in a way. And it's very fulfilling work. And I would ask you that question. It's like, what do you find fulfillment in? And what are your requirements? Right? So then you can sort of reverse engineer what type of lifestyle that you're trying to design. And that might involve, okay, am I willing to move? Not willing to move? Here are my salary expectations. Like, here's what I expect to make from whatever I'm doing. And then here's what I enjoy. Here's what people need. And there's a Japanese word called ikigai that is the cross section of all those things.
So it sounds like when you were maybe transitioning, and correct me if I'm wrong, there was a lot of just information coming at you from all different directions, almost like clutter, right?
A lot of it was self-imposed too.
And was it, with it being self-imposed, was it because you just wanted to get to the next thing? As a recruiter, I see a lot of veterans they'll leave service and then boom, they go right into a role that they think they want to do, or maybe it came at the suggestion of someone, and then a year later they realize this isn't what I want to do at all, and maybe they should have just kind of paused for a minute, just to kind of find their footing.
Yeah, there's a sense of urgency, I think, that might not be warranted. So creating that space, giving yourself a breath to adjust, first of all, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully you have some cushion that it's not absolutely urgent that the day you get out of the military, you need to be employed.
Right.
Right. Some time for your brain to decompress, because you're, so immersed in a culture, in a way of doing things, that even if it was 4 years or less, it takes time to recalibrate your reality.
Right.
And your Maslow's hierarchy of needs is now completely displaced. And that's your fundamentals. Like, is my shelter, my health, my basic needs taken care of? Okay, now what about my social needs? What about my work, my fulfillment? And then there's like the tippy top of the pyramid is like, what is my why? What is my purpose? You know,
Right.
those are tough questions to ask and answer if you're under the pressure of trying to find whatever job as soon as possible. So, you know, a lot of people neglect the base of that. Is like your self-care has to come before anything else. And I'll say, like, in the obsessive self-education that I was doing, one of the programs that I did was a dual certification through the Health Coach Institute for Life and Health Coaching. So I ended up, getting like a 6-month, ICF coaching certification because I felt inadequate in my ability to help people navigate their own thought processes. For interviews, for videos, I wanted to know more, and this is the way I justified it. But really, I should have gone to a coach first.
Oh, interesting.
Yes.
Okay.
But I'm like, how can I justify this for the business? It's like, all right, I can help people navigate their problems easier. I can help them be more comfortable on camera because I know it's fundamentally important to them.
Right.
And I struggled a lot with that because, like I said, I probably should have gotten coaching, therapy, some type of third-person mentorship that would have helped me make sense of the world faster than me just trying to do it all by myself. So maybe that's what I was trying to get to, is like, invest in yourself first, make sure that you're good, and then start asking those higher questions about employment and things like that.
I've heard you say that before on other interviews, and it was something I actually wrote down in my office: invest in yourself first. I think there was an analogy you made about, being on a plane, right? And putting your mask on first, because you truly cannot help someone else if you haven't, gone through different processes yourself or healed parts of yourself as well.
And veterans are especially bad at that. And I say that because there is a bit of survivor's guilt that comes with getting out of the military alive that no one talks about.
Absolutely.
So you feel that you owe it to someone to max out your bandwidth, to do everything that you can to continue serving. I felt this way. I'm like, it's very selfish of me to take care of myself. But I'm glad that you brought that up, because that's the mindset shift. It's actually more selfish not to take care of yourself. If you are serious about sustaining any level of service for any period of time, then you owe it to those people to make sure that you're capable of going that length.
Right.
So it's absolutely the most selfless thing that you can do, is to make sure that your health, your psychology, your everything is the top priority. And that's a fundamental life thing. Trees have no problem with that. Animals have no problem with that. It's only people that have problem with that. So prioritize your self-care above all things.
So I have to ask, is that something you still struggle with? You just said, I felt, past tense, that way. So have you mastered it? And if you have, I would love to know. Because even from my time in the Army Reserve, mentally, power through. So if you get sick, power through. If you, stub your toe, power through. And that's something I'm still working through myself, is finding that balance in all, parts of life. So I'm very mindful of it, but it's not something that I think I've completely solved. I think a lot of veterans struggle with the same thing. So have mastered it. Tell us your secrets.
Absolutely not. No.
Okay.
This is not something that you master. This is a practice. I'm glad that you use the word mindful. You have to first be aware of it, right? If you're just in the soup and you just have this frame of mind that's all about productivity, and if I'm sleeping, I'm wasting time.
Right.
There is and it's a societal thing too. So it's not just the military. Everybody struggles with productivity guilt.
Very true.
I think there's a phrase that's like, no one needs a vacation more than someone that just got back from vacation. Because unless you're really able to detach from your idea of productivity then you're always going to have this nagging feeling that you're not doing enough. I'm inadequate. I could be doing more. I'm letting people down because I'm resting. And it's that internal monologue that's incredibly difficult to turn off if you're not actively practicing mindfulness and setting clear boundaries for yourself too.
So let's talk about the opposite of that, right? What do you think were some of the most valuable lessons from your time in the military that really have helped you in a positive way with starting your own business?
Yes. Well, yeah, there are a number of things that I would attribute to my time in the military as being particularly helpful going through experiences. One is just adversity, right? Being willing to be uncomfortable and knowing that the discomfort that you feel is going to result in a positive outcome and not to shy away from discomfort. And some of the most important things that you need to do in your life are going to really be uncomfortable and have a lot of pain associated with them.
Right.
And that's probably the most fundamental thing is, okay, just because this is not enjoyable now doesn't mean it's not something that's worth doing. And there's a phrase, a mantra in the Marine Corps called adapt and overcome. And that is something that I really took to heart. It's so fundamental to nature. It's like, okay, if I can't go this way, I'm going to try that way. I'm not going to just give up and say, oh, I can't do it. It's figuring it out and constantly being adaptable and constantly having that mindset of finding a way. That is essential for entrepreneurship, is being willing to test your own assumptions and being willing to be wrong, and then being able to take the critical feedback that comes with that. So that's baked into the culture too.
I'm sure it's really tough to get that feedback. What do you say to veterans who are on the fence about leaving a stable 9-to-5 and going into entrepreneurship? Because it just seems so wildly different.
Yes. I think a stable 9-to-5 is a fallacy. I think, especially now, there is no such thing.
There isn't.
And historically, entrepreneurship has been the more risky endeavor, but I don't think of it that way. And I absolutely think that you should do what makes sense for you at the time, period. And that's all I'll ever say that I've ever done is do what makes sense for you at the time to the best of your ability.
Sure.
You'll never have any regrets if you just do that. And I probably should have had a 9-to-5 getting out of the military because I wouldn't have been such a stressful experience to figure it out. I probably would have given myself a runway. It's like, all right, here's a plan. Here is the minimum amount of income that I need to justify leaving this job. And here's the amount of time that I have to invest towards that outcome.
Right.
And being a little bit more systematic about it instead of just going all in and just taking a leap. I romanticize that a little bit. It's like, you know what? I have more fire left in me from, not serving as long as I felt that I wanted to. So I'm going to transfer that energy into building this business. But if someone is in that situation, I wouldn't do it alone. I wouldn't try to do it alone. I would ask people that have gone through that transition before, including and especially people that are in the industries that you're interested in.
There you go.
So find mentors and ask people for specific advice, not just general advice, but like your situation. They need to know all the variables that are in your life right now. And it's hard to do that. Again, the discomfort that comes with being vulnerable and sharing your insecurities, your shortcomings, things that you're good at, things that you're not good at. You have to be willing and able and ready to articulate those so that you're getting the best possible feedback from someone that you trust.
What do you say to someone that looks at your story? And these were my initial thoughts with you getting out of service and starting this incredible business. My initial thought is to say, gosh, you are so courageous. I mean, this is a brave thing to do, to leave service, to start your own thing. Is it courageous and brave, or was it calculated? Did you really have to put a ton of work into it, beyond just having the courage to go a different direction?
Good question. I think it's a lot of both. I think it takes a lot of courage, and it takes a risk tolerance that I felt that I was grateful to have. Like I said, because of the conditions that I had getting out of the military, with my wife staying relatively local, having some money saved up, having some of a portfolio built as a freelancer in this industry, I had a higher risk tolerance because I had evidence that I had already done those things.
Yep.
Right? So it's not a completely blind leap. So it was calculated. I didn't know exactly what the direction was, but I knew it was going to be in video production. It was going to be in consulting and strategy for marketing in some capacity. And then I'm just going to keep collecting data points and then start narrowing it down and whittling down what the North Star is for this. And, other than that, I think a primary motivator was, growing up very humbly. And, parents are divorced. We didn't have a lot of money. And I felt responsible for a lot of, I want to say the financial future, but I wanted to have an outlet where, I could employ family members. I can help them out.
Sure.
And I wanted to be in a position to be more generous than I could be in a normal job.
Right.
Right. Because I can't take care of people if I don't have, the leverage and the freedom of time. And I value time over money, just for the record. It's I would much rather have control of my schedule than, have an infinite amount of money.
Right. Right. So tell us about Sieff Studios and what goes on here. What do you do?
Sure. So this is the headquarters studio, and the idea is we have a safe space that is COVID proof, right? I can have clients come in very one-to-one basis. It's also a workspace, but it's a studio. We can do podcasts here. We can do training videos here. We have green screens. You can have whatever backgrounds. This studio could be anywhere with a green screen.
Right.
But it's the shortest commute that I've ever had.
Right.
It's right. We live upstairs, so it's a residential. And as far as the business goes, we are a consulting firm first, and a video production company second. And that's kind of what makes us different. It's not that we only create content. We create videos for whoever needs a video. We also want to ask the question of what is your strategy and what does success look like, right? How can we prove that investing in this video will help your business? So I obsessed over that part of it because I don't have decades of experience in videography. So I learned what I needed to learn to get to a level of quality that I felt was slightly above the expectations of my clients. And I don't need to be winning awards for best film of the year. I'm not going after Hollywood, awards and things like that. So there's a cap on how good I need to be as a videographer and editor, but there's no cap on how good I can be as a consultant.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So in addition to that, the coaching part of it too, I want to know what's important to people and the nuances of relationships and how people share ideas, why they share them, and understanding the different ways that you can leverage media to do certain things. Everyone thinks of media as marketing and sales, right?
Absolutely.
Commercials.
Right.
And of course, that's a big thing, right? We need awareness. We need to have an attraction mechanism that says, "Ooh, I want to click on this button and buy this product." So that's one function of video. There are so many others that don't get enough attention. And a lot of it is, after someone is brought into an organization. And that's why we lean into HR, talent acquisition, and workforce development. So educational institutions as well, because you can educate people, you can train them, you can build trust internally with a team, right? You can have, onboarding videos. You can have all kinds of different content that serves different purposes for different people at different times, not just commercials.
Yeah.
So we enjoy that. And I say we, it's a sole proprietorship. We're an S Corp technically, but I am really fortunate to have an ecosystem of subcontractors and virtual assistants and people that I trust to help build this business, because I absolutely could not do it alone.
You mentioned earlier about building a safe, space, and part of that is being COVID proof, right? You mentioned that, but are you talking about like mental safety, or are there common themes that you see your clients struggle with that are just part of the human kind of experience with being on camera and, being recorded, and the lights and the mics and all this stuff?
That is 100% what we're going after, is a comfortable, first, like, world-class experience, right? We want people to solve for those two barriers that we always run into, right? If you say like, okay, why aren't you, creating content? You're brilliant. You probably know somebody that you work with that is incredibly articulate. They have a personality. They're incredibly smart. They have so many great ideas, but they keep it all to themselves. And they could probably, be inspiring hundreds of thousands of people if they just decided to flip this camera on. So easy, right?
Right.
Yeah. No, it's not.
Yeah.
So there are the two main barriers, the external barriers. I don't feel like I have the right microphones. I don't have the right cameras or the right lighting. I don't have a post-production to make it look good. So people come up with these reasons why they can't do it. So we're solving for that. It's like, all right, let's get all the best stuff. Let's make that not a problem, so that you trust that the output, the product, the deliverable is going to be on par or far exceeding your expectations of quality. So those are the external barriers that we want to solve for. And then the internal barriers. I don't feel confident. I don't think people want to listen to me.
Right.
I have imposter syndrome.
My voice is terrible.
Yeah, I don't like how so that's exactly why I went into the coaching and became a certified coach, is to help people feel comfortable, because that's always going to produce the best product, right? And that's why Sieff Studios exist. It's not to have that production studio energy, like that 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, lights, ready, action, go. It's all you, right? You're not going to produce your best, most natural self in those conditions. So we want to be very relaxed, very welcoming, very residential and warm. So we wanted to take that pressure off of people and not have them feel like the pressure's on, right? So that's why I love that part of it.
Yeah. And these guys know, the AV crew that no one can see behind me, they know there's a lot of pressure here. It's very different to talk about something and then to go do it is wildly different. But I think that's how you get better. You show up and you take a swing at it. One last question here before we take a tour, because I'm so eager to check this out with you. What are your thoughts on, veterans branding themselves? I know that's a pretty wide word there, but branding themselves on professional sites like LinkedIn. Do you think it can help them in their job search?
Absolutely. So your personal or professional brand is something that stays with you throughout your entire career. And it's what people think of you. First of all, that's if we're getting into the definition of it, it's your reputation, but it's not all about you. And I think that's where people get caught up.
Ooh.
Your personal brand is not all about you.
Take. No.
Yeah. So especially if you're in the veteran or military community, you're coming from a culture that very much suppresses the individualized focus.
Sure.
Right? You don't want to be the person that's showing off, or it's a team mentality. The definition of service is putting other people above yourself. And then we get out into the civilian world, And we see that personal branding is the thing to do. You know, look at me, look at me, look at me is what the veteran might think. Is like, I don't want to be that. Like, I have more humility and I have more, you know, self-respect, and I don't want to be an influencer.
Right.
Right. That doesn't align with my values. And that is 100% valid because you're looking at it from a selfish point of view. So think about the reason why you would have a personal brand, and think about what is to be gained by doing that. And if you are building a career and you're building subject matter expertise, you're trying to build trust in a community, and you're trying to educate people on how you can serve them and how you can help them. And that is why people go into these professions and start businesses, is so that they can serve a community, they can solve a problem. So the easier that you make that decision for people, and the more readily that you can trust somebody, the better you're serving them. So in a way, it's actually, you know, it's a selfless act to build your personal brand. Sure, you're going to have benefits from it. Like, you're going to be opening yourself up to opportunities. If you change careers, your personal brand goes with you, right? If you change job titles, your personal brand goes with you. So it doesn't matter. It's not attached to any one job.
Right.
It's you're building a legacy. And it takes energy. I'm not saying it's easy.
Right.
But the more that you do it, the more what I like to call social capital that you have. And that's the big mistake that I see. If people are like, oh, I need to be on LinkedIn when I'm looking for a job, when I need something.
Ooh,
right?
Good point.
Yes.
Right.
So you have to think about it, you know, on the plane of serving the nation as a whole, serving your online community as a whole. How can I contribute? How can I add value at scale? And then whenever I need something, it's not the only thing that people are seeing.
Right.
So you want to take that for what it is, but you want to set the baseline that you have something to offer. You have value to bring to society, and you're willing to talk about it. You have, you know, exactly enough or more than enough confidence to share your expertise, share your experience, because it might be helpful to somebody else. So another reason why personal branding is worth experimenting with. And of course, you have to ask yourself what your goals are.
Right.
It's not for everybody. And that's not to say that everyone should be doing it, but I feel like a lot more people find reasons not to do it because they're afraid, right? There's fear, and you have to just unpack that a little bit. What are you really afraid of? You know, whose opinion are you afraid of there?
Right. What I kept hearing over and over again as you were talking was, what value are you bringing to others? And I think, to your point, if you think about it that way, it becomes less daunting to show up on these, you know, platforms and to share more about what you do, how you do it, and why you do it. Like, why do you love doing what you do? It's a really, really good point. All right. Well, we are eager to take a tour of your studio. And thank you again so much for being here on Civvies.
Thank you, Stephanie. This was a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
Oh my goodness. If you saw the first videos that I've done, they're so overly edited.
Bring them out. Let's see them.
Oh man, like I had no idea what I was doing. I had a camera that was broken, first of all. So it was like 2020, can't see the screen. I was like looking through the viewfinder and spinning knobs, just spinning the white balance, you know, the focus, just like, okay, something in there I can use. And fortunately, I knew how to edit really well. So I got really good at turning crappy footage into something that was usable.
Yeah.
So my safety net was editing.
Yeah. But this is the process I love to talk about, because no one starts off perfect, right? It's all these small steps and missteps and tripping through the process of trying to figure it out.
So first of all, I'm so excited that you guys are here, and I'm excited to give the tour. Usually people come here to get filmed and not film me, right?
Yeah.
So the studio was an eight-month project. Here is the book that my wife was kind enough to compile. So we both documented the construction process of building this studio.
And let me just say, now that I've gotten a sneak peek of the studio, I cannot right now imagine what this looked like before.
Well,
so I know we're going to see it.
Yes, you don't have to. I will show you. So this is the unfinished basement here. And it was just raw insulation, concrete floor. You can see the fuse box here, the electrical panel that we had covered up since. And we had a door that was leaking. We also had a crack in the wall. So there were things that needed to happen to this basement anyway. And we, of course, took care of that first. And I will say, like, the entire project was DIY, except for this door, painting the ceiling, and this countertop. So this had to be custom done. Everything else we did ourselves.
Tell me about this moment. Like, what were you feeling?
Oh,
Exhausted, over the top, like excitement? What?
I still have trouble believing it. I still have trouble believing that we pulled this off, and that it was a dream that turned into a physical reality. So what you're looking at here is just kind of the reception area. You have a coffee maker, you can make tea. There's a mini fridge with all kinds of different beverages. So we wanted to have that as a part of the experience. Like, if you want to, grab a beverage, make a coffee, you might be getting here early in the morning and really need it. So we wanted to have that available.
It's very welcoming when you walk in.
Yeah. Well, that's what we're going for. And you can see the logo centerpiece here. And then we're going to walk our way down the hallway here, and you'll see the accent wall, the Iwo Jima wall here to the left. And this is all extra pieces of plywood that we recycled. We're like, okay, what are we going to do with this? What design are we going to do? And that's where we landed. And this is a bit of a staging area here. So there's not much to see here. There's a full mirror so that you can, see how you look before you go into the studio and start to record. And then this is just a little soft light that if you were doing your final checks before you go into the studio, you can kind of just look and make sure everything's good. And then you have full confidence walking into the studio, right? Okay, and here's the main studio.
Ooh, very cool. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, tell me the door. We got to talk about the door.
Okay, so the door is a continuation of the pattern that you see on the wall. We wanted the ability to have different backgrounds on each of these walls and to have different options to say, hey, if you want to have this in the background, or you want to have the maple diffusers, or the curtains, or we can put up a backdrop or a green screen, we have options. So we broke the studio up into two main sections. This is the podcast section, and we have the ability to make it sound really dry, as they say.
Sure.
So we have our overhead lights just to create a nice natural top-down bright feel, and then our key lights, and we have a lot of different track lighting available here.
And I have to ask about the equipment, because right now I don't want to touch anything, right?
Sure, yeah.
There's a lot of equipment, it's probably expensive. Was that a pretty big just trial and error learning curve for you to kind of figure out, what type of equipment to get for the space?
Yes, so a lot of it I had already had, and my philosophy with equipment is minimal. And I don't want to have things that I'm not gonna use. And it's hard starting out as a freelancer and not really knowing what type of projects that you're gonna take on.
Right.
And there's also this temptation to just buy gear, right? Because it makes you feel like, okay, I can create a better product if I buy a better camera, right? It makes sense when you say it, but in reality, if you can advance your skill sets, you probably don't need to buy a new piece of equipment for a very long time. So I wanted to go into the business of videography and video production with a minimal mindset. It's like, what is the least amount of gear that I need to deliver an exceptional product to the client? So I landed on, a podcasting setup, interview setup, and for anything else beyond that, I can always rent gear, or I can hire contractors, subcontractors that already have that equipment.
Sure.
So it didn't make a lot of sense for me to just get a bunch of stuff.
Yeah. I would love to showcase the best part of this room, which is actually through that door.
Sure.
Can we check it out?
Absolutely. Stephanie, welcome to the back of the studio, but the front of the property. This is
gorgeous.
This is the Glebe Bay. There's something very relaxing and therapeutic about having water as the backdrop. So I like letting that surprise people when they come here. is it looks, it's very residential, a little bit rural as you come up.
Right.
But then this opens up into the bay, which we're so lucky to be able to call this home. And of course, welcoming guests here from the studio, they always feel like this is kind of like a vacation.
Yeah, no, it's gorgeous. We pulled up, and I think the first thing I got out and said was, were you going to tell us about the view? I just needed to stand here and just look at the view for a couple of minutes because it's just breathtaking. I have been to the White House a couple of times. There was a band. I'm trying to think what was the one event. It was a springtime
the egg
event.
roll?
It wasn't the egg roll. Maybe the White House Gardens tour.
Okay.
But the band was phenomenal. Like we stopped just to listen to the band. I was like, what flowers? Let's listen to the band.
All the premier bands are really, really good.
Yeah.
They're so competitive. There's maybe like 200 people that audition for one spot that might open up because people stay in those jobs.
Right,
Especially like the presidential units. Mm-hmm. It's just, it's one of the best gigs that you can get, and not too many people know that the United States military is the #1 employer of musicians in the world.
I did not know that.
Yes.
This is gorgeous. Tell me about what this beach means to you and how it feels to be just out here for like your mental health.
Yeah, I always enjoy finding space. So I always enjoy making a point to find space to just relax and reflect and be out in nature, most importantly.
Sure.
I think in today's world, a lot of people forget that we didn't always have cell phones, we didn't always have computers and jobs and things like that. And there's something very primal and very therapeutic about being in nature.
Right.
And especially, near a body of water. And, I always feel at peace here. And this beach especially means a lot to me because I proposed to my wife on that pier over there.
Yeah. What are some things that the general public just might not know about the Marine Corps band?
Yeah, well, one of the big things is all of the military bands are exceptional in what they do. And a lot of people have advanced degrees. A lot of people come in starting at E6.
Oh, okay.
And they don't have to go to boot camp.
Oh, did not know that.
Not my unit. We went to boot camp.
Okay.
But like the President's Own, you have, the Pershing Zone, and those are unique because it's a civilian acquired skill set. So there's nothing that you need to train and learn in a school that you don't already have because you showed up with those skills already.
Sure. And you've auditioned, they've vetted your skills.
Exactly. And
sure.
if you don't have a secondary combat function and your only job in the military is to play music, then there's no reason to train you in boot camp. So if you audition, you pass, you got the job. And for good reason. Right. It's a pretty sweet, it's the best job that I've had so far. And I can't say enough good things about the people that find themselves in military bands. Of course, I married one of them.
Right. And like she's still in. She's still serving.
She's still in. And I think she's at 11 or 12 years in the military now. She used to be in the Army. But my goodness, it's such a great ecosystem of people. And we're very fortunate to have a lot of friends that are still in the military bands, stationed permanently at 8th and I. So again, very biased, but can't say enough good things about it.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing that. So before we go, I'm going to have to do this. I have to touch the water, otherwise I'm going to regret it, right? Live a little. See how cold it is. Oh yeah, it's cold. It's really cold. Well, Jesse, thank you so much for coming on MetroStar's Civvies. I really enjoyed hearing more about your story. I think there's a lot of parts of your story, and especially building your own business that our veteran community can really relate to, and seeing what you've built, right, from start to finish. Nothing happens overnight. Everything kind of takes time. So where can people find you if they want to connect with you?
Sure. Well, thank you, Stephanie. It's been a delight talking to you. And if people want to connect with me, LinkedIn is the best place. And especially if you're in the military community, if you're a military spouse, if you're a veteran, and you're looking for some guidance about entrepreneurship or making career pivots, I've had plenty of pivots that I can speak to, and I would be happy to connect with you there on LinkedIn. I'm also a part of the Service to Success community, and there's an app called Mill Mentor. So if you look up Mill Mentor, you can choose from a large range of different professionals and subject matter experts, a lot of people that have gone through the military transition themselves. So if you want to have a conversation, it's completely free, and it's always free. So I'm always happy to connect with people on the Mill Mentor app.
Love it. Thanks again, Jesse.
Sure. Thanks, Steph.